Good evening. Welcome to the first episode of season 2 of the Poop Naked preseason team reviews. My name is Evan. I'm the commissioner of the league. It's kind of bored after work. Normally, one of the things I'll do in the off season is I'll pay to have an outside source review our league and make a podcast about rankings, how they think your roster stacks up and where you're going for the upcoming season. I was not able to get that done this season. They were just inundated with requests. So what I thought would be maybe a little bit more meaningful would be if I go team by team in short, like 10-minute spurts to just kind of give my thoughts on your team, how you'll do this season, and showcase a couple tools that I use when I'm just kind of evaluating my leagues. So take it with a grain of salt. It's all just my opinion, not meant to be derogatory. There'll be some shit talking, obviously. I know you guys have fun booming me in the chat when I mess up or give myself all the players that I want. But like I said, take it with a grain of salt. It's all meant in good fun, and maybe it'll give you some ideas for how to enjoy the league better or how to just look at things a little bit more differently. So without further ado, we're going to start from the bottom. So I'll be going through the standings in inverse order, based on how we finished last season. So we'll be starting with the non-playoff teams and then culminating with the championship team. And then I might do a final, like everybody at once. Here's how I think we're all gonna finish or whatever. So I'm gonna try. This is my first one, so not really sure on how I'm gonna go about going through these breakdowns. I'll probably do mostly screen sharing and try to keep them to like 10-15 minutes as I go. So bear with me, and hopefully you enjoy, because I know I will. And that's really what matters. So, okay. So here. Okay. So here we're sharing. First up would be Chris Robinson, AKA Poverty Franchise. And he definitely fits the bill with a very eclectic roster, made up of very interesting speculative players. There's definitely some interesting people here. He's using all his roster spots, which is good. Using all the IR spots, which I think is also very good. A lot of times people will not use these. It's always great to try to pick up injured players who you think are speculative and just kind of stash them on the IR. One thing about this league is you can do suspended players on here. So like last year, I was able to get Deshaun Watson, Kamara this year. There's not a lot of suspended players out there who are valuable. Usually if they're suspended, it's they're not super great, but there are definitely some players that can be suspended who are also free agent pickups. If someone drops someone because they're suspended, it might be worth looking at to see if you have a spot on your IR to stash them or stash them at your bench if your IR is full. So let's go through his starters. So actually, I think what I'll do is I'll show this website that I found a couple months ago called Dynasty Daddy. And apart from being a really badass website name, I think what it is pretty cool. So you can input your sleeper league and it pulls in all the teams from your league, and you can look at it. What they do is they pull in data from different websites, mostly like free ranking sources and trade calculators. And what they do is they compile total value, and then they kind of categorize it. This website's cool in that it will rank by the trade value that you have on your team, and then it'll rank by like your projected starters. So if you're a rebuilder, it kind of gives you an idea of positions of strength on your team based on how the dynasty market values your players. So, you obviously want to be towards the left of the scale with more total value, kind of evenly distributed through all the positions. So if we go through here, looking at far to the right, we see Chris's team. So looking at the graph, you can see that the most valuable aspect of his team is draft capital. So going back to the sleeper page, he's done a pretty good job of keeping his draft picks. One thing that's always tough to do is figure out whether you're going to trade your draft picks or not. That there's varying theories of thought, varying trains of thought with this. I always think, if I'm trading my first, it's going to be a big move. It's definitely not something that you can just throw around. All the other picks are valuable to some degree, but the first definitely carries that name cachet. It's your most valuable piece by far. The nice thing about draft picks is they'll never lose value. Unlike players who can get injured, draft picks are kind of the currency that is immune to inflation. So really good to be keeping your own picks, trading for picks that you think will be valuable. So going through the rest of Chris's positions, you can see tight ends making up the smallest portion, wide receivers, pretty good. I'd say average to below average. The tight end group, pretty thin. And then the QB, I would say above average. If we go into the presets and we look at probably contender view. So let's see. Starters, you got some pieces to work with. So in terms of overall starters, last, I think going through projected starting roster kind of makes sense. Brock Purdy is QB1. This would obviously be much higher. Kyler Murray, obviously, not sure if he's going to play this year. He'll probably play some with the Cardinals tanking, hard to say. Will they rush him back or try to tank for Caleb Williams? But anyways, so between Purdy and Mac Jones, he's got two young, pretty solid quarterbacks. Mac Jones, offense couldn't have been worse last year. New offensive coordinator. I think he's definitely going to be better than, I would say a high-end QB2 is pretty realistic. Whoops. And so that's where I think this quarterback ranking comes from. I think considering you've got Kyler Murray coming back, Brock Purdy was very good as a starter. I think that's pretty good spot to be for a quarterback room. It's not going to win you the league without Kyler Murray, but I don't think Purdy and Mac Jones are going to lose you many games. Going to the next, let's go to the running back room. So he ranks third overall in starter projected running backs. If we toggle that to trade value, you can see that it still stays at 3. So he's got a pretty good stable of, I would consider high-end running backs. Main pieces, you've got Pollard, Stevenson, Pierce, Williams, other starters through here. Jalen Warren, pretty high efficiency guy, and then a lot of speculative pieces kind of coming off the bench. Isaiah Spiller, could be good if Akers loses a starting job. Spiller would probably be the next guy up. Zach Moss dealing with arm fracture, and Kyren Williams as well. Oops, I misspoke. Spiller's for the Chargers, not the Rams. So he's got 2 backups that could be fairly valuable. 3 if you include Warren. If the starter goes down, that RB3 ranking could probably shoot up. Javonte Williams, a lot of people high on him, coming back from a pretty big knee injury this season. I think he'll be pretty good. He's played in the preseason. It'll be really interesting to see what comes out of this. Dameon Pierce, Texans can't be much worse than they were last year. He was getting all the usage, which is pretty rare for running backs. Going up here, Pollard, obviously efficiency monster. Zeke's no longer there. Will they give him all the volume he wants? I think he was like RB3 last year, so tough to match that, but he's certainly got the opportunity to put up, as you can see, almost 16 points a game. Stevenson was also really great last year. Pretty good pass catcher. They brought in Zeke Elliott. I think they made some comments about lightening the load. Stevenson kind of was less efficient towards the end of last year, but he's young, pretty valuable piece going forward. So pretty good running back room, honestly, to work with. As we get towards the not as fun spots, we've got last in wide receivers and last in tight ends. And this one, something to keep in mind with these rankings is this is total value across your positions. So it's skewed between, obviously you want high-end pieces, but you want a good amount of usable pieces, ideally. So, if someone has a ton of running backs on their roster, that cumulatively is going to skew this number. So right off the bat, we're looking at, I believe, contender value. So out of his starters, they're projected to be last. In terms of trade value, View also projected to be last. Same with tight end room. So that tells me he doesn't have very many starters, either the tight end or at the wide receiver position. So if you're thinking about making a trade with Chris, or if you're Chris making a trade, those two areas would definitely be a spot to consider improving if you want to contend this year. So going back through his starters, he's got Nuke Hopkins, target hog, only guy in Tennessee, wheels up. Hollywood Brown, really the only guy in Arizona. Poor QB play, no Kyler, reflected in the points per game, not always super healthy. Kind of weird here that Zay Jones projected to score more than Hollywood Brown. Zay was really good last year. They brought in Ridley. Christian Kirk is still there. Ingram is pretty good as a tight end. Offense is ascending, so definitely an interesting piece. I would say probably decent third or fourth wide receiver. And then, scrolling through, not as many starters. Allen Robinson could be good as a slot in Pittsburgh. I think that's probably a good spot for him at this stage in his career. One guy on Chris's roster that I think will be fun to watch will be Justin Ross. Justin Ross was a huge prospect out of Clemson. Was projected to be really good after a really good freshman season. But then he was diagnosed with a rare, congenital effusion of his neck. And that caused him to, I believe, go undrafted. But he's been cleared. He was not really playing last year, but he's been getting a lot of hype at camp. 6'4", 210. He kind of looks like, in college, he looked like T. Higgins, but with better hands. So I think, this is definitely the most interesting piece, I think, on Chris's roster. If he emerges as the number one or even number two wide receiver in Kansas City, this is going to be a big bump in value and definitely help that number 10 overall ranking. So going back here, the last thing to look at would be draft capital rank. So Chris has quite a bit of draft capital according to the chart. Number 2 overall in total value. Going to his I think this is just because his team is projected to be so bad, honestly. I think these are all projected to be the first pick of their given round, which would probably why that is so much higher than anything else. Because looking at this total value, the difference between him and some of these other teams is about 2,000 points, which is not really that much, except with Kane, who has multiple firsts. So I would guess that would be what it was. One thing I thought that would be kind of interesting is to go through different moves that the person made as far as trades. Because one thing that Chris has been good at is making interesting trades. I think one of the more team-defining trades would have been this one with Aaron from back in April. This is interesting bunch of pieces for draft picks. Aaron receiving Terry McLaurin, and then the rare first for first swap. So these are always fun because you're essentially betting that my team is better than yours. So it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. Chris got, from the looks of it, 2 to 3 maybe starters for a couple pick swaps, giving up a second overall. It was my second, so that I think was like pick number 15 overall. So not a huge investment, but really interesting to see where Chris and Aaron finish before we evaluate who won this trade. Next, Aaron and Chris colluding as usual, swapping a very far out 25 first for David Montgomery. I think probably good move for Chris. Accruing draft capital would be my goal. This team I'm thinking is going to need a rebuild. So really, if I've got aging pieces, I'm probably looking to sell them for firsts or young players who are likely to improve in value to teams like Aaron's, who is maybe more ready to compete for the championship. One of the more shrewd trades I think that Chris has made was during the draft, swapping, acquiring Mac Jones for Aaron's second round pick. If we go to the draft tab, so he gave that one to Alex, and Alex used that to draft Marvin Mims, if I'm reading this right. So Chris essentially was able to turn a mid to late second round pick into a starting quarterback in a super flex league, which is, I think, really, really good. Chris didn't have much draft capital this year, able to procure Herndon Hooker and Eric Gray. I think Herndon Hooker is really interesting. He's an older rookie quarterback. But, who knows what the Lions are going to do with Goff. He's going to have a couple of years to sit and learn. Getting him in the fourth round is honestly pretty good value. Looking at the players who went behind, you've got similar speculative quarterback ads who had worse draft capital. And other play, in these rounds, you're really just trying to hit home runs. And I think anytime you can get a quarterback on a good team with a decent situation, I think is great. Eric Gray, back up to Saquon Barkley. Who knows? You never wish ill health on anyone, but he might improve in value if Saquon were to go down. So overall, pretty interesting team. I think the assessment of Chris's team is probably close. If I had to guess, this would probably be a bottom 4 team, unless Kyler comes back really fast, Javonte Williams absolutely smashes, or Chris is able to make some really shrewd trades along the way. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this, but definitely will be one of the teams I'll be paying most close attention to. So I think that's pretty much all I got for this one. Chris, good luck. Looks like you got your work cut out for you, but best of luck going into the season. Oh no, honey. Alyssa, how do I see what I recorded?
What?
I finished the first one, but I don't know if I recorded it.
Did you press the record button?
I did, but then I just stopped it. Is there somewhere that it saves the video?
Mine automatically pops up saying it's saving. Go to your files.
Where?
Go to your files.
Where are those?
Go to your files on your computer.
Files on my computer?
Yep. Like if you ever download something or.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
And then
oh wait,
see if you
screen sharing paused.
Oh,
Uh,
resume share. Oh, are you recording?
I thought it was.
Go back and get into Zoom, like your whole video and everything.
Well, I just ended it.
Oh,
Or,
okay.
I mean, it says I'm presenting, I guess.
You go back to your files.
Yeah, okay.
Go into that Zoom one. There, it was just there. Go back to documents. Zoom. Look for today's date. 12/8/28. And then convert.
What?
Do I try the second one?
It's the same type of file.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm trying.
No, I just don't know where the video went. Like,
Stop recording.